Peace and blessings, people. Welcome back to the channel. And for those of you, this is your first time being here, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can get notifications when I put out content just like this, okay? So today we're gonna be talking about how do you unclog the arteries and prevent heart disease. Now, the reason why this is so important, even for my people out there in their 20s and their 30s, heart disease is the #1 killer of all human beings, the #1 killer. And what's even more important is what's relative is that we've been seeing a lot of athletes, NFL, NBA, who are not only collapsing of the field of cardiovascular disease or cardiovascular complications, but also retiring from the sport, leaving behind $1 million contracts. So it's telling us that it's a mega issue and it needs to be addressed, okay? The other thing that's really important, I'm gonna give you a few sort of data points. Every 34 seconds, somebody dies of a heart attack. So as the clock runs on this video right now, 2 people have died of a heart attack in this very short time that I've been talking to you. As a matter of fact, in 2020, 697 people died of cardiovascular disease, okay? So something is fishy in the water, all right? Also, cardiovascular disease has been the #1 killer of all Americans since 1950s, okay? Which is interesting because that's the point in time when processed foods began to spread out across America, okay? We'll get into that a little bit later. It's also the #1 killer of women, okay? It kills more women than all forms of cancers combined, okay? Just think about that for a little bit. And then also, surgeons perform about 240 bypass surgeries every year. That means that they're taking an artery out of the leg or a vein out of the leg and they put it in your heart, cracking your chest open. Every year they perform 240,000 of those every year. So heart disease, clogged arteries is a big issue. And that's what we're gonna dive in today. And I'm gonna give you a holistic approach to how you actually look at it. And then also how do you prevent and in some cases reverse this. All right, let's get started. So first thing, some interesting facts. Typically when you go into your doctor, they're gonna test you for total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, and triglycerides. Now I'll tell you that that testing is antiquated, okay? And I'll tell you why it's antiquated in a second, but that is not going to get the job done, okay? And the reason why that's so important is because quite often the villain when it comes to heart disease is often cholesterol, but cholesterol really isn't the issue. I'm gonna dive into that in just a second, and I'll explain to you how cholesterol is really the symptom, it's not the actual cause, okay? The other thing that is really interesting is that if you wanna get a really good test, they use an MRI to actually look at the particle size, the type, and also the number of cholesterols as well too. So it's a far more in-depth test. You can see if the particle sizes of the cholesterol are, big and fluffy, which is actually not as dangerous, or if they're small and dense, like a rock, okay? Those are actually dangerous. So it's also the size, it's also the density, it's also the type as well too. So we have some more updated testing so that when you do go into your physicians, this is the type of testing you may want to ask, okay? Because it can be more helpful. Now, typically, what you typically see when somebody has cardiovascular disease, and they typically will put them on a statin drug. A statin is something like Lipitor, okay? One of the #1 selling drugs of all time, okay? Now, statins, unfortunately, even though they hand them out like candy, there's a lot of information that people don't know about statins, okay? Statins actually cause mitochondrial injury, okay? Mitochondrial injury means that it's injuring the thing that creates energy in your body, okay? And so many other functions. So that's a really, really terrible thing that happens as a result of statin drugs. Also, they cause rhabdomyolysis, which is muscle pain. So a lot of people who take these statin drugs end up feeling like pain in the joints, pain in the muscle, okay? And also, as a result of using statins, you also see a lot of people will have issues with blood sugar too, okay? So that may not be the end all solution to helping somebody with cardiovascular disease. And even when you look at the studies, it took 89 patients for the statin drug to actually help anyone. So imagine that, almost 100 people for it to help one person, along with all of the side effects that I mentioned before. So keep that in mind. That's why we're talking about a more natural and holistic approach, okay? Also, what's really important is when you think about cholesterol, even though it's being villainized, it's important to understand that cholesterol is very important to our actual health. Like, we need cholesterol in our body, but our perception of cholesterol is clouded. Like, we think about cholesterol as, this thing that clogs our arteries, and that's the only function that it does. But cholesterol has thousands of functions in the body. I'll give you a few. It lines the nervous system. So without it, like, your nervous system would literally go haywire, okay? It also is the backbone of virtually every hormone in your body. So without cholesterol, you wouldn't make your vitamin D, okay? You wouldn't make your sex hormones, okay? Which is critical, right? Also, cholesterol is very important for every cell in the body. Every cell in the body has this bilipid layer, okay? This layer that, anything has to go in and out of, it has to go through that lipid bilayer first, which is made of cholesterol. And here's the other really cool thing. You can make all of the cholesterol your body needs in your liver. It's actually made in your liver at night when you sleep, okay? So all of the cholesterol that you're eating in your diet is just extra cholesterol, okay? So it's hugely important that we understand that our bodies are capable of making cholesterol, and then any additional healthy fat that we put in, it has to be healthy fat. It can't be trans fats, these unhealthy vegetable oils, things of that nature, okay? So that sort of gives you a little bit of background, with the approach to clogged arteries and heart disease. So let's jump into sort of what actually causes heart attacks, okay? As I mentioned before, most of the time people will say that heart attacks are caused by, elevated cholesterol levels causing atherosclerosis in the arteries, clogging up the arteries to get clogged, which causes increased pressure in the heart because you can't perfuse the heart with blood. And as a result, the heart overworked, has a heart attack, okay? All right, so that's the old way of thinking, okay? A much more efficient way to think about it is to think about, well, if the cholesterol clogged the arteries, okay, what actually caused the cholesterol to cause the arteries, okay? Our diet, right? And most people, when they think about it, they think, okay, he ate too much fat or she ate too much fat. That's actually not it. Fat isn't what causes a lot of cholesterol elevation in the body. It's actually sugar, okay? It's actually sugar. Elevated sugar actually causes cholesterol. Let me give you a few examples. We eat, on average, Americans eat about 152 pounds of sugar every year. Okay, so just imagine 152 pounds. That's a grown man. That's a grown lady. Okay, but in addition to that, we eat about 135 pounds of white flour. Okay, so you combine those two things. Sugar and white flour causes inflammation in the body. Okay, so not only that, all sugar, especially excess sugar, and all of that, white flour and added sugar is excess sugar. All of that sugar will be converted into cholesterol. Okay, so that sort of gives you an idea of why, the American diet is really a prescription for a heart attack. Okay, but also what's really important is eating an excessive amount of white flour and sugar and processed food causes inflammation in the body, okay? So if it causes inflammation in the body, it's gonna cause inflammation in the heart as well too, okay? So think about it. We live an inflammatory lifestyle, okay? An inflammatory lifestyle means you stress. An inflammatory lifestyle means that you don't get adequate sleep. An inflammatory lifestyle means that you don't get adequate amounts of water. You don't get enough exercise. And it also means that you're eating very poor food that is inflammatory. You're on an inflammatory diet, okay? So it inflames the heart, namely sugar and white flour. But just think about that for a second. I'm going to correlate this back to the cholesterol now, okay? The cholesterol is coming in the artery, not because you just ate it. That's not the only reason it comes in. The reason why it comes in is because cholesterol is there to build and repair, okay? You got to remember what I said earlier. There's cholesterol in virtually every cell in the body, in that lipid bilayer. So we need cholesterol in every cell in the body. So it doesn't make sense that cholesterol is this dangerous thing, right? Cholesterol is there to build and repair, okay? So what happens is we eat this inflammatory diet. Those inflammatory foods not only cause inflammation inside of the vessels, but they cause these micro tears. That type of food causes micro tears in the vessel as well. And the cholesterol comes in there to patch it up. Okay, so these micro tears happen inside of the blood vessels and the arteries, in the heart, and then the cholesterol comes in there to patch it up. Now, what happens is, as we continue to eat this food on a daily basis, 3 times a day, 365 days a year, we're constantly assaulting the lining of the blood vessels, okay, or the arteries. So the cholesterol is coming in there every time to patch it up. So that each time it adds another layer, that layer gets thicker, thicker, thicker until that blood vessel closes up and occludes. And that's what causes a heart attack. But you can see it's not really the cholesterol. It's the assault. It's the inflammation. It's the diet itself is a major contributor, okay, among other things, okay? The other thing, in addition to inflammation, in addition to a processed diet that is sort of laden with sugar and white flour, is obesity, okay? But you can see how these things are tied together. As I said before, the more sugar you eat, that sugar will be converted into fat. That process is called lipogenesis. Now, you've heard about somebody going to get lipo, which is fat removed, but genesis is not just, it doesn't mean beginning, it means synthesis, it means production. So lipogenesis, make fat. And the fat is being made from all of that sugar, from all of that flour that Americans, we eat on a daily basis, okay? And as we're making more and more fat, that is what is creating the obesity epidemic. As a matter of fact, 75% of Americans are either overweight or obese, okay? So take that statistic right there. If there's 10 people in a room right now, 7.5, or roughly 8 people, because it can't be a half person, 8 people are going to be overweight or obese, okay? Just think about that. If there's 100 people in the room, 75 people are going to be overweight or obese, okay? That's America today. That is the first time in history that's ever been, a fact. So you got to understand something's changed, something's different. And what's most important to understand about obesity is this. Obesity increases cholesterol in the body, okay? So it's going to increase fat in the body. That's obvious. It's also going to increase your blood pressure, okay? It's also going to increase your risk for diabetes. Now you're metabolically unhealthy. And it's also going to put a lot of pressure on the heart, because typically when people are obese, a lot of that fat is going to be concentrated in the torso area. So it's going to put a lot of pressure on the internal organs, but also a lot of pressure on the heart, because now this fat is going to be throughout the tissue in the heart and all around the other organs as well too. So obesity is a major contributor. As a matter of fact, obesity is probably tied with high blood pressure, which is a silent killer, as 1 and 2 risk factors for heart disease or a heart attack, okay? So of course it makes sense if they're the primary causes, then it makes sense that they're the primary solutions too, to lower the blood pressure and to get to a normal or healthy blood body weight, okay? So hugely important. Other causes are gonna be deficiencies, okay? Now, what you'll notice is, for those of you out there who either have an uncle or aunt, or maybe you have been put on prescription medications for things like high blood pressure, coronary arteries disease, etc. What you'll notice is that many of the things are correcting issues with deficiencies. I'll give you an example. A lot of people will take a drug called Norvasc. Norvasc is a calcium channel blocker. So it's okay. So it's sort of manipulating the calcium in the body. Okay. A lot of people will also have issues with potassium. Potassium is very key when it comes to, heart health. Okay. And blood pressure. Also, another key element is going to be magnesium as well. And a key nutrient will be quercetin. Okay. Quercetin it can be found in food. Okay, so you can find quercetin in food. And the cool thing about quercetin is when you eat the right foods, quercetin, a natural nutrient found in foods, can inhibit oxidation. Okay, what's the issue with oxidation? Okay, you remember when I was saying earlier how cholesterol is simply a builder and repairer? Okay, it just goes in and builds and repair. Okay, when there's inflammation, when there's insult. Okay, a lot of the insult is occurring once the cholesterol comes in to build and repair and patch up the spot, like putting on a Band-Aid. Oxidation comes in and makes that cholesterol hard. Okay, so that's why they call it, plaque in the artery. It gets hard. Okay, it's oxidation that's causing that. Okay, so if you eat foods that have the right nutrients in them, like quercetin, the really cool thing is that they're antioxidants. Okay, so they're going to prevent the oxidation, which means it's going to prevent the hardening of the arteries. And when the arteries get hard and stiff, they're hard to move blood through. Okay, if something's stiff and hard versus very elastic, the stiffness is going to cause an increase in pressure. Okay, the best example I can give you is I can give you a pipe that's made of like PVC pipe that's thick plastic. Now that is very hard, so the pressure is going to be hard inside of there. But if I give you a balloon and put water in it, it's very flexible. Okay, so the pressure isn't going to be as high in there. Okay, and that's what happens. Okay, when you're getting this plaque in there as a result of oxidation. Okay, hugely important. So you want to correct deficiencies. The other thing is toxicity. Okay, there are a lot of cardiotoxins, things that are toxic to the heart tissue. Okay. And these cardiotoxins will cause arrhythmias. Okay, so if you might have an arrhythmia, you can have a murmur, things of that nature. Chemo drugs, radiation are actually cardiotoxic. Okay, I'll give you an example of a drug called doxorubicin. Doxorubicin is used for breast cancer. Okay, doxorubicin is a cardiotoxin. Okay, radiation is a cardiotoxin, so it can affect the heart. As a matter of fact, a large majority of patients who die of cancer, a large majority of them who use chemo, a large majority of them actually die of a heart attack. Okay, they don't actually die of the cancer. Okay, so it's really important. Erectile dysfunction drugs. So drugs like Viagra, Cialis, these drugs are actually cardiotoxic. As a matter of fact, Viagra, when it first came out, it came out as to be used for the heart. Okay, and they noticed one of the side effects of using the drug was that it gave you an erection. Okay, so that's how Viagra came to be. But it's important to know that these drugs are actually cardiotoxic. They're toxic to the heart tissue. Okay, mercury. So if you consume a lot of fish, and fish will have a lot of mercury in it, because the fish, especially from the seas, will consume that mercury as a result of being in the sea. So a lot of people will have mercury toxicity, never know about it, and it can cause arrhythmias. It can cause issues with the heart as well. And also things like energy drinks, stimulants like, ADHD medications, and so forth and so on. So those are just a few things that cause issues of the heart. And what I want to do now is sort of dive into some of the foods, some of the herbs, and some of the holistic approaches you should take if you want to prevent your arteries from getting clogged and also prevent a heart attack. Okay, but before I do that, what I want to do again is remind you is that these are things that could work as a form of prevention, and prevention is far better than a cure. Okay, so if you don't have any issues with heart disease, as they always say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cures. Okay, so focus on prevention if you don't have any issues now. And if you have issues, you can still use these, but here's the most important thing. You have to start with a lifestyle shift. If you don't start with a lifestyle shift first, the issue that you're gonna have is none of these things will work. I can give you foods, I can give you herbs, I can give you holistic things that you can do, but the unfortunate thing is this, those things don't work unless you do. You gotta change your lifestyle. And if people get on the internet and start telling people, oh, if you eat this and you eat that, it'll help with your heart disease without changing your lifestyle, the thing that actually caused it, it will not help you, okay? So you gotta do these things first. First things first, shift your diet to a cleansing diet that's not clogging, okay? Because again, you're clogging up your arteries, so means that you're eating foods that clog. So switch to foods that cleanse. Those are fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. Okay, hugely important. The second thing is exercise. You have to exercise. You got to get moving because we live in a society that is very sedentary. And the cool thing about exercise is it's not only going to improve your blood flow, but it's also going to improve the flow of your lymphatic system too, which holds about 80% of the fluid volume in your body, okay? Which could affect the heart, okay? The other thing that's really important is managing stress. Stress does have an impact on the heart. Just think about it. If I were to scare the bejesus out of you right now, your heart rate would increase, okay? And that's what happens every time you get stressed, okay? So you gotta manage your stress. We can't live in a stress-free world, but we can live in a world where we properly manage our stress. The other thing is adequate sleep. Sleep is when you heal at night, okay? That's when you heal. So if you're not getting adequate sleep, sound quality sleep, then you don't have the time to repair, the time to heal, the time to restore. The other thing is corrective deficiencies. So if you got vitamin D deficiencies, which impacts the heart, if you got omega-3 deficiencies, which will definitely impact the heart because omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, and I told you how inflammation is a critical part of actually developing heart disease. Correcting deficiencies is going to be very important, okay? And then detoxing and cleansing to get all of that toxicity out of the body, okay? So let's dive into a few foods and then we're going to wrap up today. Pomegranate. Pomegranate because it's rich in polyphenols and also very rich in anthocyanins, okay? Polyphenols can be found in cloves, also can be found in cacao, and it also can be found in grapes, okay? Rich in polyphenols, so you definitely want to get those. Also, nuts and seeds, particularly sesame seed and hemp seeds. These are really good because they contain ALA, and ALA is very good for antioxidants, so preventing that oxidation. Also, it's a form of soluble fiber when you're eating those type of seeds as well. And that's really good for the good bacteria in your gut as well, okay? But these seeds are packed with iron, like sesame seeds packed with iron and calcium, which is hugely important, as I mentioned before, to the cardiovascular health. Also ginger root. Ginger root is anti-inflammatory, so every morning I'm drinking ginger root tea, okay? So that's my little routine. Also rosemary. Rosemary is a herb that I incorporate in a lot of my food. So you put the medicine in the food, okay, with the rosemary. So I use that all the time. I try to use fresh, but if you can't use fresh, get the next thing that's best, okay? Leafy greens, because they're high in magnesium and potassium. And I told you those are the two of the things that are quite often part of that deficiency, group of things that people are deficient. 80% of people are deficient in magnesium, okay? 80% of people. And magnesium is responsible for over 300 biological actions in the body and is very responsible for relaxation, okay? So with your blood pressure, you got systolic and diastolic. Systolic is contraction, diastolic is relaxation. Magnesium is there for the relaxation, okay? So if you're deficient in that, you won't relax, okay? In your whole body, not just in your heart. Also, what's really important is intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting gives your body an opportunity to rest. It also gives your body an opportunity to cleanse itself as well, too. Also, intermittent fasting is good for lowering insulin in the body. Insulin is a fat storage hormone, but it's also inflammatory. And also it decreases blood sugar. Remember, we have the issue with blood sugar when it comes to cardiovascular disease. And if you do fasting long enough, you can go into a state called autophagy, which is intercellular cleansing. meaning it gets rid of old damaged cells and gets rid of like oxidized cells. Remember, I told you how important that was as well too. And the last thing I'll tell you is nettle, which is one of my favorite herbs in the world, or stinging nettle. Stinging nettle reduces blood sugar, but it also reduces blood pressure as well too. So I hope you have enjoyed this video today. A lot of great content in here in a very short amount of time. If you like it, make sure you hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe below, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.